Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Helen, so much for that wonderful introduction. And yeah, I very much appreciate it. And of course, I do remember over the years hearing Helen tell stories about her time in her meetings with my dad. So it's lovely to have you be the person to introduce me today for my first ever address to the AUMA. And it's really an honor for me to be able to be here. So I want to begin, of course, by thanking all of you for your contribution, the contribution that you make every day to Alberta and to Albertans through your roles in municipal government. And as I say, it is an incredible privilege for me to be here today, standing in front of you as the Premier of Alberta. I'm also privileged, and I know you've been talking with them and meeting with them throughout the course of the past while, but nonetheless, I'm very privileged to introduce your new provincial government to you, and in particular, our cabinet ministers to you who are all here today. And I know you just met with a lot of them, but not all of you at the same time. So we have, of course, my amazing Municipal Affairs and Minister of Municipal Affairs and Service Alberta, Darren Billis, O'Neill Collier, who's our Minister of Agriculture and Forestry, Joe Ceci, the Finance and President of Treasury Board, David Egan, Minister of Education and Culture and Tourism, Kathleen Ganley, the Minister of Justice and Solicitor General and Aboriginal Relations, Minister Sarah Hoffman, Minister of Health and Seniors, our fabulous long-standing fellow who I know you all know very well, Minister Brian Mason, Minister of Infrastructure and Transportation, Marg McQuaid-Boyd, my amazing Minister of Energy from my hometown of Fairview. That's why she got the job, I'm just saying. Actually, that's not why. It's because she's really quite excellent. Shannon Phillips, the Minister of Environment, Parks and Status of Women. Minister Irfan Sabir, Minister of Human Services. And finally, but by no means least wise, Minister Laurie Sigurdsson, Minister of Advanced Education, Innovation, Jobs, Skills, Training and Labour. So I'm very pleased that all of my cabinet is able to be with you today. And I know Helen referenced it, but I do like to brag. They are the first gender-balanced cabinet in the history of Canada. And of course, I'm very pleased to be joined here as well by the vast majority of our caucus members who are here as well and who have been with you throughout your conference and will continue to be. I hope that you'll enjoy meeting with all of them as your meetings progress. Now, as you all know, being in public life is a vocation that brings its share of wonderful moments and very long nights. It brings high points and sometimes some not so high points. And I've had my share of all of these since May, just like you have in your own work as municipal leaders. But as you know well, it is more than worth it. It's all more than worth it for the opportunity to serve the people of Alberta province-wide and in each and every one of your communities. Municipal leadership is about community building. It's about improving the quality of life of the citizens of this province. You make a critical contribution to our province in your roles, and we're going to do in our government everything that we can at the provincial level to partner with you, to support you, and to work together to get results for your communities. Now, as I'm shortly going to underline, there's truly a lot out there that we need to work on together. And we're going to be doing this in fairly interesting times, I must say. The challenges that the government of Alberta and you in municipal government face are not small. All you need to do is look at the numbers. A year ago today, the WTI price for oil was $94.42. This week, it's been trading in about the $46 range. In 2014, our economy grew by 4.4%. In 2015, our GDP is projected to shrink by about 0.6%. Our economy added 48,000 jobs in 2014, but by one estimate, we may well have lost already over 30,000 jobs in the energy sector alone this year. Energy sector capex stood at approximately $70 billion in 2014 and has declined to approximately $45 in 2015. So these realities are confronting our province and therefore your communities with a very tough fiscal challenge. We ran a $1.1 billion surplus last year. Coming into the election last spring, our predecessors projected that the province would run over a $5 billion deficit this year. And since the spring, that estimate, pressure has continued on oil prices and therefore on our provincial finances. And so it is likely the case that our deficit will grow. So these are tough challenges, to be sure. But put up against this, we have some very significant advantages that we can build on. We have, as I've said many times before, world-class universities, colleges, and trade schools, and one of Canada's youngest and best educated workforces. We are also a wonderfully diverse province, including a strong, growing, and dynamic population of Indigenous peoples who we will be working with in a new spirit of respect and reconciliation. We still have, by far, the overall lowest provincial taxes in Canada, with no sales tax. And we have, by far, the lowest provincial debt in Canada, the only province in the country with a zero net debt. We also have an innovative, flexible capital and finance market in Alberta. And quite frankly, as much as our energy industry is under pressure, our world-leading energy companies know how to cope with the volatility that is inherent in energy these days. So with these challenges and strengths in mind, what I want to do today is give you a survey of some of the economic and fiscal priorities that we've been working on since our election. And I'll conclude by talking with you about a very important priority that requires a very close partnership between the Government of Alberta and you. So let's begin with some fundamental points about our economy, and I want to talk a bit about our energy industry. Now, whether you're an Albertan or a longtime Alberta watcher, change at the top after so long might seem a bit surprising. We don't change governments that often in Alberta. But, change can be good. And we are working very hard, and I want to assure you we are working very hard to make this transition as smooth as possible and to bring as much economic stability as we can while we implement our plans. And these plans center on living up to our promise to grow prosperity and create good jobs and conditions that will be widely and fairly shared. Renewed prosperity that will benefit every Albertan. And we know there is only one way to succeed, and that's by supporting an open, sustainable, and increasingly diversified economy. And we can't accomplish this by ourselves. Job creators create jobs in the private sector, not government. And so we will be honest, thoughtful partners to them. And we will maintain a warm welcome for investors and uphold and maintain their right to earn fair returns. Alberta will continue to be a healthy place for private investment under our government. And this definitely applies to energy. We know that the energy industry is critical to our economy and will be for many years to come. Supporting existing oil sands projects, establishing new opportunities in our energy economy, and pioneering advanced technologies, all this requires investment on a large scale. So under our leadership, Alberta's abundant oil and gas reserves will remain wide open to investment. And we will also maintain one of the most competitive tax systems in Canada. Our government will boost exports by seeking out new relationships, strengthening old ones, and enhancing Alberta's environmental record. And we will be consultative and prudent in how we take the province in a new and better direction. Now, as you know well, we don't control the international price of oil. You might have heard periodically that we do, but we don't. And we don't control the policies of Saudi Arabia or Iran. So we therefore have to manage the hand that we've been dealt, while working to diversify our economy and working to reduce our dependence on a single product and a single price. And we can also work on strong progressive policies that move us forward and position us to build on these resources as prices recover, as eventually they will. So, for example, this July, the Canadian Energy Strategy was endorsed and adopted by every single provincial and territorial government in Canada at the Council of the Federation meeting held in St. John's, Newfoundland. Now, we didn't go into that meeting with any certainty that we were going to succeed. The Canadian Energy Strategy is a complex intergovernmental framework that commits Canadian governments to an environmentally responsible, sustainable, prudently managed and determined development of Canada's energy resources and energy potential. There were some important competing views on these issues, but ultimately we found that conducting interprovincial business respectfully and politely turned out to be Alberta's best strategy. So we achieved our goal, a basic meeting of the minds that energy is a foundational part of the Canadian economy, that developing it responsibly is in the best economic interest of every Canadian and every Canadian government, and that we can find common ground across provincial and territorial borders to keep building this industry, which is foundational to Alberta's economy. And so this Canadian Energy Strategy will also help us as we address a key challenge facing the energy industry in this province, which is, of course, the need to improve our access to new world markets, which means essentially getting at least one new pipeline built to Tidewater. Now, your government is working on this matter through drama-free, ongoing discussions with our key provincial partners in British Columbia, Ontario, and Quebec. And we will do so ultimately with the federal government as well, in whatever form it will take after October 19th. We are going to pursue these discussions within the framework of the Canadian Energy Strategy that our province, under 4 succeeding premiers, worked hard to persuade our provincial colleagues to adopt. Getting this right will position our energy industry to recover and return to growth as international prices recover, an essential part of economic recovery for the Alberta economy as a whole. Finally, our province needs to prepare for renewed growth in the energy industry as prices improve by getting it right on the environment. We are listening carefully to Albertans about this issue because Albertans feel strongly, as do many business leaders in the energy industry itself, that it is long past due for the government of Alberta to clean up its Environmental Act. The poor air quality, for instance, in this province that we saw in Red Deer is a direct threat to the health of our children and our seniors. Albertans know well that environmental issues, and specifically the issue of climate change, is a key global problem that every community and every jurisdiction must help address, especially energy-producing jurisdictions like ours. If we don't get it right on this issue, quite frankly, a solution is going to be imposed upon us sooner or later by others, by a federal government or by our markets, which will increasingly insist that energy products that they buy be mined and processed responsibly. So if we want an environmental policy that works for Alberta and keeps our capital in Alberta, which is really quite fundamental, then the time to act is now. And finally, we need to act because doing so is increasingly going to, quite frankly, be the price of admission to those energy markets, those new energy markets that we seek. So, in summary, we need to make sure that Alberta gets the full benefit from the new Canadian energy strategy. Specifically, we need to work in the same spirit of good neighborliness, respect, and, as I've often said, our Alberta-style amiable persistence to open up those export opportunities. And we need to get it right on the environment for the health of our children, because it's the right thing to do, because doing it now allows us to set the terms, and because getting it right on the environment is part of getting it right on the economy. Now, just before I leave the energy industry, let me say a few words about Alberta's current royalty review. Now, our review panel is led by Alberta Treasury Branch CEO Dave Mowat. He is helping us with a process that I hope to complete before the end of the year. Now, this is an important review that is about modernizing and updating our royalty system so that it fits our energy industry for the future instead of the past. This review is about considering whether there are ways to better manage our royalties so that they better support processing, diversification, and value-added development with the associated jobs, growth, and stability here in Alberta. And this review is about ensuring that as prices recover, we collect and begin to save an appropriate share of our own resource wealth in the Alberta Heritage Trust Fund for the future of our children and our grandchildren. The time is past due, long past due, for the Government of Alberta to return to a responsible long-term approach to collecting and investing our royalty wealth so that we stop being the farmer who pays for the groceries by selling off the topsoil. Now let's speak a little bit about Alberta's broader fiscal challenges, and about a topic I know is very near and dear to your heart, which is the future of infrastructure investment in our province. Now, friends, we have seen drops in the price of oil many times before in this province, and we'll see price cycles many times in the future. But that doesn't make it any easier to deal with the kind of revenue shocks that we are witnessing as I speak. We'll be setting out the details of how we intend to manage the situation in the provincial budget we will present to the legislature during the week of October 26. So I won't be rolling out the details of that for you today. But I do want to speak to you about the priorities we're working on and give you a sense of the direction in which we are going. First, so it's basically a three-pronged kind of approach that we're going to take. First of all, we are going to stabilize public services, and we are going to correct some mistakes that, in our view, the previous government made in managing public finances, like a $1.1 billion cut to health care overnight, like deep cuts to our schools and post-secondary institutions with no warning, and like the idea that the wealthiest among us can't afford to pay a single additional penny to protect public services, but that average Alberta families can. Now, the people of Alberta elected us to office to make better choices. And here's a key principle, and one of those choices. Stable public services help build and maintain your communities. So we took some first steps in that direction during the spring session of the legislature. And this question of how we can stabilize key public services like healthcare and education and make sure that they are there for those who need them in the context of a prudent, responsible, and sustainable budget is very much on our minds as we do this work in preparation for this fall. Public services, we know, are the backbone of so many Alberta cities and towns. They are the glue that holds some communities together, and the jobs they offer often give young people a reason to come home after they finish their education. Hospitals in towns and health centres in towns across Alberta are the first point of contact for parents when their children get sick. Teachers in local schools get to know the families of their students and form relationships with those young people long past graduation. The local library becomes more than a place to find a good book. It is a community gathering space. And the countless community organizations that you fund through FCSS and through our increase to FCSS build strength and resiliency even as we face the tough economic times that I'm describing. So these are core, critical services that we believe are important and that we will ensure Albertans can continue to count on. Second thing that we are going to do is that we will present a plan to return to fiscal balance. During price shocks like the one we're seeing now, the provincial budget plays an important role as one of our province's principal economic shock absorbers. And that role comes, though, with a certain responsibility. Specifically, it makes no sense to respond to layoffs and job loss in the economy by making things worse through more layoffs and more job loss. Now, I would suggest that this is a basic disagreement that I have with both of the province's Conservative parties. They continue to make their case, which is about immediately laying off thousands of public servants, including teachers and nurses. They try to persuade Albertans that what you need in your communities right now is hundreds of layoffs and significant erosion of your health services and your schools. I make my case, which is about the kind of prudent, stable approach that most Albertans support. At least until 2019, the Government of Alberta will be acting on the stability option. And as the economy recovers, we have to make sure that the provincial government's bottom line recovers too. And that will require the Government of Alberta to very carefully and very prudently and thoughtfully manage the growth of public expenditure and to look for opportunities to reallocate funds from lower priority areas to higher ones. There won't be a time when you never hear of programs being cut. It will have to happen. But it will be done thoughtfully and prudently within the context of these critical values that I'm talking to you about today. The circumstances we find ourselves in require us to follow a disciplined and clear plan that allows this government to play its shock absorber role in the short term, while returning to balance as quickly and as reasonable as possible. And that is what we're going to do. Finally, the Government of Alberta has an important role to play as a good partner to this province's job creators, entrepreneurs, good ideas people, and visionaries, including the public entrepreneurs, good ideas people, and visionaries who serve the public as leaders in municipal government. People like you. It is never more important to get that role right than when we are managing this oil price shock. And there are a number of things the Government of Alberta should do and will do in the face of the kind of challenges that we find before us today. Alberta has always been a great place to live and to launch a new enterprise and to explore a new idea. We need to become an insanely great place to start a new business, to build on new innovation, and to get a new idea off the ground, which isn't about a race to the bottom on taxes. Albertans want and will pay for well-managed, prudently budgeted healthcare, education, and public services like the ones that you provide. These are foundations of both a good society and a good climate for growth and investment in each and every one of your communities. Becoming Canada's best place to start or grow a business, competing at the high end with other provinces and other jurisdictions, with Alberta-owned businesses that provide our people with good, high-skill, mortgage-paying jobs is about much more. It's about operating a province with a modern, efficient infrastructure. It's about access to capital. It's about supporting innovation. And it's about being determined about trade development and single-minded in attracting inward investment throughout our economy. And it's about reforming the way we structure government so that we are easy to work with, one-stop shopping, as they say, for government business services. So we are considering all of this very carefully, and we will have a lot more to say about it in and around the budget. But for one example, we are taking a very careful look at the timing, the pace, and the priorities of Alberta's capital plan. This is a time when there may be some capacity available in our construction industry and when capital itself is relatively inexpensive. And this is a time when managing the timing of our investments in essential infrastructure can help maintain jobs in the short term while building a more efficient and competitive economy in the long term. Now, this summer, the AUMA submitted an important document, a set of ideas for us to consider, titled Budget 215 and Capital Plan. Aptly titled. In the first sentence of that document, the AUMA argued, and I quote, and I'm sure you guys know this, but it's important to repeat, municipal infrastructure is a core requirement for supporting Alberta's economy as it ensures market access, advances environmental stewardship, enables public safety, and provides quality of life for our citizens. That is precisely right. Your arguments about at-risk water and wastewater infrastructure, particularly in smaller municipalities, are very compelling, as is the need to address flood control, public transit, and roads and highways. In your roles as elected leaders in your communities, I need you to make these points loudly, clearly, and with committed enthusiasm, to reassure the people of Alberta that the time is right for a significant additional reinvestment in infrastructure in this province. Because a significant additional reinvestment in infrastructure in this province is exactly what we are considering as we prepare the provincial budget. Now, there are some important strategic investments that we need to get moving on related to our province's health, flood, transit, and other infrastructure. And we are looking carefully for useful, well-thought-out, shovel-ready initiatives that make sense to greenlight this fall in the light of economic circumstances. And that's for this fall. And then there will be an additional sum that we will be looking at investing in our province's infrastructure over the course of a 5-year capital plan. So you make a number of other important points in your submission. Our Municipal Affairs Minister, Darren Billis, our Minister for Infrastructure and Transportation, Brian Mason, and our whole Cabinet team will be working closely with you to consider these issues in the months to come. We will also be working closely with municipal leaders to get the job done on the issue of big city charters, making sure that the final result is going to work for you and will lay out a plan for future community and economic health. We'll also be moving forward with the MGA under the leadership of our Minister of Municipal Affairs, Darren Billis. If we are going to do all these things, we need to work together in the closest possible partnership between our two levels of government to ensure we make the right choices and to make sure we get the best possible value for the citizens of this province. So I'm looking forward to working with you on getting all of this right. And so is every minister in our government. And so is every MLA in our caucus. And so there you have it. We are considering plans to stabilize key public services like health and education. We're considering a prudent, sensible, and responsible plan to return to fiscal balance. And we are considering how we can best promote jobs and prosperity, a task that requires everybody in this room from both levels of government to team up to do more addressing Alberta's infrastructure challenges within that group of strategies. So overall, I am very, very excited about the opportunity to work very closely with all of you on all of these issues. It is challenging times, but I believe that if we take that ingenuity and that hard work, which is fundamental to the culture of our province, then I believe that we can succeed. I'm looking forward to getting to work on all of this with all of you. So let's get to it. Thank you very much.